Welcome everybody. I hope I do entertain you today. My name is Lori Farley, and right now I'm a branch manager with Remedy Staffing. I was a former colleague here at Rochester Works. I was a placement specialist for a couple of years. I worked in both locations, so I've placed people on DSS and I've placed people that have been on unemployment. I used to assist with the 5-step workshop. If any of you have taken that, I used to help with that too. But staffing is my main background. I'll kind of date myself here. I've been in staffing almost 25 years, off and on. I've worked in traditional staffing. I've worked in professional staffing. I've worked in medical staffing. So I do have well-rounded to every industry. The nice thing is I know a lot of companies and organizations. I know a lot of HR people. I know a lot of other recruiters, which makes for a nice network when I'm working with somebody and trying to place them. What I'm going to talk about today is pretty much the do's and don'ts of working with a recruiter. I'm open to questions. Just raise your hand. This can be very informal. I'm not here just to spout out a bunch of stuff and then everybody kind of look puzzled. I certainly will stop. I've got pretty much some bullet points and then we can have discussions if that works for everybody. Just raise your hand and then I'll just call on you to ask the question. So to get started, what are the differences between recruiters and HR? Recruiters don't work normally with HR policies and procedures. Basically, a recruiter is somebody who has resumes coming in, works with companies or with the company that they're associated with in-house. They can be part of the HR department, but they don't really deal with benefits. They don't really deal with policies and procedures of the company. They're there to find the best person for the manager to hire, and that's what they get paid for. They recruit and focus on staffing only. Recruiters are sales professionals, okay? They really have to sell because they have to sell the job to the person that's responding, and they have to sell that person to either the department manager or the company that they're working with. So most recruiters will have some form of a sales background. Our industry and staffing has shown that people with a retail background are very successful because there's a lot of multitasking, there's a lot of sales, and retail, when we look for people to start as staffing coordinators or recruiters in our office, a lot of times we turn to the retail industry. Go-between for the job seeker and the client. So if I'm a recruiter who works for an agency, I'm going to be the person who's the middleman because normally, until the interview process, the job seeker and the client won't have direct communication. The recruiter is the person who's going to work both sides of that. And like I said before, HR's focus is on policies and procedures and benefits and things within their organization, payroll, and the recruiter is there in a staffing function only. So, common myths and misconceptions about recruiters. I don't know how many of you have worked with recruiters on any level, but a misconception is the recruiter's job is to help a job seeker find employment. How many think that's true? Right, because what is their job? Their job is to help the client that they're working with fill that position because that's how the recruiter makes money, okay? So the recruiter, although you may have a good relationship with them and there are recruiters out there who want to have a relationship because they need to keep that pool of people, their main focus is working with their client because at the end of the day, that's how they get paid. More so with your headhunters versus your recruiters who work for like local staffing agencies with local companies, you'll find people that you only deal with over the phone that may be in another state. Those people are going to be more distant to you than somebody maybe who's local that you actually can even get a chance to meet face to face. Recruiters are unresponsive. Recruiters are very responsive to their clients because, again, that's where they're making money. But I'm going to go into a little bit later why you may think a recruiter is unresponsive, but there's some kind of etiquette to follow up because, remember, a recruiter is not only working with you. Sometimes recruiters, depending on the capacity of the jobs that they're focusing on, can be working with hundreds of people at one time. And although they may ask you if they can send your resume to an organization, most likely they're not going to get back to you until they hear from that organization. So you may think that you're the only one working with them or you're the only one for that position, but a lot of times when they call you for a position, they could be sending multiple candidates over. You just happen to be one of those candidates. And a lot of times if you're not chosen for an interview, they may not get back to you right away. It doesn't mean that they're trying to be rude. It doesn't mean that they're trying to be unresponsive. It's just that the workload and what they're doing and how they're interacting between you and the client can make it so that it seems that they're not getting back to you all the time. Recruiters don't care about long-term relationships. Not true. Some of the best people that I work with are people that I knew when I started in the staffing business years ago that I'm still in contact with today and always say to me, keep an eye out for me. You know, I'd like to have relationships with people that I've placed because when they're coming up to their next job opportunity, I want them to look at me to be the person to place them. The way that I'm going to make money is by having good people in my pipeline. And so when a company calls me and says, hey, do you know anybody with XYZ skill? I'm going to be the person who says, well, yeah, you know, I actually have a couple people for that. And they may be people that I haven't talked to in a while, but I know that they, you know, give me their resume and they say, hey, keep looking for me. You know, I don't know when I want to make the move, but if you see something come up, give me a call. I do work with people who are more actively looking for work, and those people I may be more in contact with. But again, it just depends. It depends if we get a job in that's going to match their skills. It depends if that person really is fitting what I need them to fit. Many times people will send me a resume and tell me that they want a certain type of position. And to be honest, I'll be honest with you and tell you if I don't think that's ever going to fly. Because, you know, you can have transitional skills, but sometimes it's a far stretch. So I'll be honest with you to tell you what I think you can and cannot be skilled for. I'm the type of person who, if I'm going to build a relationship for you, you know, I'm going to want to do what's good for you, and I don't want to get your hopes up to be looking to go into an industry or a particular position that's not going to happen with you. So if you are working with a recruiter, especially somebody local, I would make sure you establish a relationship with them. And I'll tell you in a little bit a couple ways to do that. But definitely keep that relationship going with them. You know, don't be a pest, but you want to make sure you're making contact with that person. Recruiters decide who get hired. That's not true either. We decide who's qualified to go over to the client based on the job description that they've given us, and we can suggest from some of the soft skills that people may have who might be a good fit outside of that actual technical skill that they need. But at the end of the day, it's the hiring manager that's doing the interview at the client that makes the decision who gets hired. People and companies who work with recruiters know up front that there's a fee to placing somebody. So it's not like they're going to pick somebody who walks in the door over somebody that they're working with a recruiter just to save 10 or 15% of that person's annual salary. Because that's normally what a company is going to pay for you. It's going to be anywhere from, depends on the type of job, but anywhere from 10 to 20% of the annual salary that they settle on. Okay? But when somebody asks to work with a recruiter, normally it's because they have been unsuccessful in the job search themselves within the organization, so they need to reach out to other avenues. So at that point, they know up front what it's going to cost. It's not something that after you've interviewed and all of a sudden we say, oh, hey, did you know it's going to cost you $5,000? No, they already know up front what it's going to cost. And most of the time there's a guarantee attached to that. So the organization knows that they're not taking so much of a risk, because in the first 3 months, and most companies have a probation period, that they're not going to be saddled with somebody that's not going to work out and they can get their money back if in fact they found that they made the wrong choice. So what can job seekers expect from recruiters? Well, you should expect some form of a sense of urgency, okay? You should feel that when you're that perfect candidate and they call you for that position, that they are going to follow up with you one way or another. And it's good to ask the recruiter as you're working with them, now you're going to be sending my resume over to XYZ organization. What can I expect in this hiring process? Because every company that we work with is a little bit different. Some people jump right on those resumes and they want an interview tomorrow. And a lot of times the people that I'm working with might be working, so that's kind of impossible. Sometimes you'll send a resume and we might hear in 3 or 4 weeks. Some people might want a phone screen first. Some people might want a direct interview face to face. So it's good to ask the recruiter, what is the process going to be if I apply to this company through you? What can I expect? Because then you're not sitting there saying, well, geez, it's been 2 weeks and they haven't gotten back to me. Because you're already going to know, hey, I'm going to send your resume over, but I can tell you this company does not move fast. This is not a top priority position. It's going to be at least 3 weeks before I hear back from the contact. This way you're not feeling like, oh, I sent my resume over, I never heard back, I'm not qualified for the position. Because when you're in a job search, you have to keep that positive energy flowing. You don't want to get negative for any reason, so ask those questions up front. Make sure the recruiter gets to know you. There's nothing wrong with giving a little bit of a background. One of the things we do, and it has a funny name to it, but every organization I've worked for does things a little bit different when they do a resume submittal. And at Remedy, we do what's called a sizzle along with the resume that we're sending. So we may be talking to the client on the phone, but when we send you over, we do a little synopsis on who you are, not only in your technical skills, but in your soft skills. So with the organization I work, Remedy Staffing, we do want to get to know you. And we do a lot of search and placement. Many people think we're just a temporary agency, but we're not. A good majority of our business comes from direct hire business. And it's a lot of the companies that we may send entry-level people to look to us to help with their higher level staffing. Right now, we probably have 15 direct hire positions open through our 5 offices. And I can tell you a majority of it is in the skilled trades line of work. Right now, there is a huge demand for people in skilled trades, and they're not out there. And it's very difficult for companies who need those skills to find those people. So if any of you are skilled tradespeople, really, you need to be working with a recruiter because I'm sure you will find a job pretty quickly. But I like to get to know my people. Most definitely, if I can, I like to meet them in person. And that's why I do a lot of workshops, like with Rochester Works. I'll go in and meet with a lot of their job strategy groups and the people that are working through their programs, because that's face-to-face. I get the resume. I get to meet the person, talk to them. I have a clear picture in my head of who they are. Another good way that I get to know people is through LinkedIn. I link in with anybody who is looking for work that wants to work with me. So that's another good way. Many times there's a picture. I can kind of see what the person looks like. I get a little bit of a synopsis of what their summary is. I see where they've worked, for how long. So it's very important to get to know the person that you're working with. And don't be afraid to ask hard questions when it comes to somebody calling you. Everyone's eager to find a position, but you don't want to take something thinking the grass is greener, and then you get in with the organization and it's so not what you thought it was because you failed to ask questions. You know, every company is not for everybody. There could be, and I've always thought this way in staffing, is many people can have the same skill level. You know, say I have 5 people who are software developers, okay? But not every person is going to fit within the soft skills of that organization. As we all know, every company has their own culture. And so really, that's normally what makes somebody successful, is the fitting into the culture of the organization. You know, when you have that interview and you say, geez, I really just clicked with that person that I interviewed with. We kind of were on the same wavelength. Or you go on an interview and you think, I could never see myself working for this company. So one of the things, or a couple of the things that you should do, and I have them listed up here, is ask the recruiter, why are you representing this company? What do you like most about them? Why do you work with this company? Tell me a little bit about what their culture is. And the recruiter should be honest because they want to make a good fit. A recruiter doesn't make money by sending a bunch of people over that interview and never get picked for the position. They'd be very poor recruiters. And how many people with my background have you helped in the last 6 months? You know, I might be posting for a software engineer. Okay, maybe I've never placed one before. You need to know that because I might not be good at it. You know, I might be better at placing CNC operators or CNC machinists than I am placing IT people. And to be honest, I am. IT is not my forte. I've never recruited in IT. But it doesn't mean that I'm not going to get a position in for it and try to recruit for it. But again, you're going to want to ask, hey, Lori, how successful have you been in placing people with my skills? And a good recruiter should be honest with you. Oh, I've placed 100 of them. You know, that probably isn't true. Any questions so far? Okay, either I'm boring you or I'm doing very well. What does a recruiter expect from job seekers? Couple things that are very important. Let the recruiter manage the process. You know, we're the ones that have to be working with the client and be the go-between, so let us manage that. You know, we should be honest with you and letting you know, again, what the expectations are, but it's important for us to control the process because we need to be reporting back to the client as well as you. Don't apply to every job posting that you see because you think your skills are transferable or you're looking. I'll give you a perfect example. We do a lot of recruiting on Craigslist. And the other day, I had a posting open because I have a company who's looking for a tool and die maker with 5 years experience. It's a direct hire position. I put this all in my ad. I put that it's through Remedy Staffing. And I had somebody who applied that's a cashier. Why waste my time? You know? And unfortunately, I look at that person now like they don't follow directions. And so that name is in my head now of that person. So just, you know, make sure if it's saying degree required or a specific amount of experience required, that you really look at that. Because if you're going to be sending your resume over and you don't meet that criteria, then that recruiter is going to get a bad taste in their mouth. And then when something comes along that you might be qualified for, they may choose not to call you. Again, you know, resume, I know Rochester Works talks a lot about doing resumes. They're extremely, extremely good at it. One of the things that I know that they teach, which is, you know, something that recruiters like too, is get rid of your objective on your resume. Make sure that you have a summary on your resume of what you do, who you are, and what talent you can bring to that organization. Because that helps us too when I'm trying to sell you to an organization. I can take and choose words and phrases from that summary to say, hey, you know, this person did whatever. Add competency or skill section to your resume because that also helps a recruiter to pick out those specific skills that are going to be transferable to the job that they're going to be submitting you for. It makes it easier for the recruiter, again, to work quickly on your behalf. And the biggest thing is send your document. If you're working with a recruiter and they ask you to email your resume, email it in Word format. PDF really doesn't do a lot, and I'll tell you why. When I'm going to be sending a resume over to an organization, they're not going to have your contact information because remember, the recruiter is going to be managing that process, okay? So when I get your resume, I have to do a couple things to it. I have to resave it. I have to take off your contact information. I have to put my logo on it so they know it came from me. A lot of times companies are working with more than one agency. So it's so much easier to do that, and it looks so much cleaner when I can do it in Word because a lot of times the PDF files come off, and what we have to do is then make a copy of it, white out your contact information, paste a logo on it, rescan it back, and by then it really doesn't look as bright as if it was in a Word document. So if no one's ever told you that before, it's really important to do that. Okay? Okay. What are the do's and don'ts of working with a recruiter? Okay? Yes?
Sorry to interrupt, but if anyone who came in late, if I could just have you sign in for me, please. Just raise your hand.
So some of the do's of working with a recruiter. One thing is you want to be honest. Be honest about your background. Be honest why you're unemployed. Be honest with a recruiter because, again, they're your cushion. They're your person to sell you to the organization. The recruiter necessarily doesn't have to tell the company everything you're telling them, but they need to have that honest relationship with you to sell you and work with you and make sure that they're able to find you a position, okay? The worst thing is to tell the recruiter something and then go in and tell the employer something different. Like, for instance, you were actually fired from your position. You tell the recruiter you were laid off, but then when you go into the interview, you're like, well, yeah, I was fired. I had an attendance issue. Because then that doesn't give the recruiter credibility. It obviously doesn't give you credibility. So the biggest thing is to be honest with what you're looking for, specifically your pay rate. I have so many people who will say to me, yeah, I'll work for that wage, that's no problem. And then they get into the organization and they're interviewing, nope, my bottom line is 60,000, but you told me it was 40. You know, so again, that just doesn't do. And what happens is, say you're not chosen for the position at that particular client, but there's another position that comes up at that client that you're qualified for too, I probably could never submit you again because it doesn't look good. It just doesn't look good when you tell the hiring manager something other than what you're telling the recruiter. Always be professional. You know, be professional with the recruiter. You know, as far as your emails to them, your phone conversations with them, be professional. Because hopefully, I'm speaking for myself, but the recruiter should be professional with you. And really work with multiple recruiters. Especially in Rochester, companies work with different organizations. There's some small recruiting firms, there's some staffing agencies, and staffing has changed a lot. You know, we don't do short-term temp work much anymore. It's really search and placement and long-term temp to hire positions. Now, again, we do entry level, but we do a lot of high-level positions as well. Yes?
In working with multiple recruiters, you run into the possibility of multiple recruiters submitting your name for the same job.
Here's what should be happening. A recruiter should never submit you without your knowledge. A recruiter should be calling you, telling you about the position, letting you know, and if you're working with them, they should be okay to tell you the organization, because you're right, that's not a good thing when you get submitted by 3 people. So really, the recruiter should be honest with you about where they're submitting your resume. I would hate to submit somebody blindly. I don't think I would have good success in that, because how do I know you don't know somebody there, or how do I know you work there and you didn't put it on your resume? I always tell anybody, you know, tell me where you don't want to be sent, and I kind of write that on the back of the resume, because, you know, I want to make sure that I don't ever keep calling you for a company that you said, I've told you 100 times I don't want to be sent to, you know, XYZ company.
The other question in the same line is, I'm, going to be working with multiple recruiters.
Yeah.
I am also doing some job searches on my own, not through recruiters. And is it important to keep all of your recruiters engaged in what you're doing? That is, I have another recruiter that's submitting me here when that opportunity comes up, or I'm working on this company or these companies outside of any recruiter.
Absolutely. Here's what I say. Again, no one should be submitting you without your knowledge. That just doesn't make for good business. So be honest. That's what part of the being honest. Be honest with the recruiter. If I call you and I say, I want to send you to ABC company, don't tell me, oh yeah, okay, send me over, thinking it's going to give you a leg up when you've already applied there. Okay? Now, it doesn't mean that I can't submit you. It doesn't mean that at all. Because there's been many a times I've had people apply to an organization, and then I've kind of been the go-between to kind of give them that extra push. But as long as I tell the company up front, well, you know, he applied here. Your name, sir? John. John applied, you know, with your organization for this type of position 6 months ago. And at that time, he didn't get called for an interview. I want to submit him, and I'm wondering if you will look at his resume again. So this way, I'm prefacing it with the organization. I'm not making anybody mad. You've been honest with me, and then at that point, it should be good. But again, no one should be submitting you without your knowledge. And yes, you know, maybe on a monthly basis, depending on how many recruiters you're working with, you might just want to send out an email to those people blindly, copying them, and saying, I just want to let you know I'm still in the market, I'm still looking, because you are going to want to check in with your recruiter from time to time. These are the companies that I've recently applied with just to keep you in the loop of what I'm doing in my job search. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Don't disappear. That's another good rule of thumb. When you're working with a recruiter, if you find a position, whether it's through another recruiter or it's on your own, it's just common courtesy to tell the recruiters that you were working with, hey, I'm out of the job market now. I have found a position. Because that recruiter doesn't want to constantly be trying to reach you. It's not good for that recruiter to tell organizations, oh yeah, I have this guy, but you know, you found a job 6 months ago and I didn't know about it. I should be talking to you more than, once every 6 months. But you're going to want to make sure that you're going to be telling your recruiters, hey, I'm out of the job market now. I have found something. Sometimes people take transitional work. Hey, Lori, I'm out of the job market. I took something. It's a stepping stone to what I want to be doing. I'm working at this point. But, keep your eyes open because I'm still looking for that, wonderful position, that you and I discussed. So it's good to keep them in the loop even if you found work. Don't be a pest. In the beginning, I talked about how you should ask the recruiter, what's the process going to be like? How is this going to go? Okay? And if I'm an honest recruiter, which I'm doing this off of being a good, honest recruiter, I can't speak for everybody out there. If I tell you it's going to be 2 weeks before I get back to you, don't call me every day. Because you know what? Then I'm going to get annoyed, and I'm going to say, okay, this person's not following directions. I told them it was going to be 2 weeks. They seem to call me every day at 3 o'clock. And now guess what? I don't want to place you because you're driving me crazy. So, it's good to check in with your recruiter, but make sure that you're doing it when you have something to say. Hey, checking in. It's been a couple weeks. What's going on? Or I love to tell people this. You see a position and you want me to help you get into that company, call me and tell me. I could be working with them and you don't know that. We have 5 offices at Remedy, so I work with companies in every county around. And we go to Genesee County as well. We work in Batavia. That's part of, I work in Livingston, Ontario, and Genesee County, and southern Monroe. But we also work in Wayne County, Seneca County, and all of Monroe County. We have 2 offices in Monroe County. So there's really not a corner that we don't work in. So we could have a contact at that company. And we have 2 salespeople that are out and about every day talking to organizations, getting those good job orders for us. A lot of times the direct hires that we get come from our sales managers meeting with higher level people at organizations who say, hey, we really need help with this position. Because organizations, as they downsized when the recession hit, a lot of them didn't focus on getting recruiters back in-house. A lot of it is people are doing it as part of their HR function, and they're really not experts at the staffing part of it. Again, remember, HR is the policies, procedures, payroll. They really don't know a lot about how to hire and what to look for. So companies say, hey, it's worth it to me to go to an organization to find this person because I don't have somebody in-house who could really focus on it, 100% of the time, and we need that person now. Don't take it personally. If you're not chosen for the position, don't take it personally. My motto has always been, as long as I've been in staffing, there's a job out there for everybody. We just have to find where it is. And I've always worked with every applicant that way. It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow. You may not be the person that we thought for this particular company, but guess what? Then it wasn't meant to be. I always say that. And I always did that in my own job search. Going back a little bit, before I started at Rochester Works, I was unemployed for 2 years. I had gotten laid off during the recession. I worked for a medical staffing organization that downsized because people were not using staffing. And, I tried not to take it personally in my job search. Yeah, I thought I was the best qualified candidate, but obviously they didn't. And, it was funny because there was a couple positions that I was a little upset that I didn't get because I was down, it was like me and one other person. Oh, I hate when it gets to that. And they chose the other person. How dare they? But, when I did get the position at Rochester Works, that was where I was meant to be, and I knew it from the day I walked in that door. Because I learned so many things that I could bring back to the staffing arena that we really didn't do years ago in traditional staffing. We really didn't help people with resumes. We really didn't do career counseling. And the way things have changed because of the economy and the amounts of people that are unemployed, that's such a big part of being a good recruiter these days. And I learned a lot of that from doing placement and working with individuals at Rochester Works. So long and short of it, don't take it personally because the right job's out there for you. It may not come in the time frame that you want, but it's out there. The biggest thing, and John, we kind of alluded to this a little bit with your question, but don't go around the recruiter and contact the client directly. That'll really get you off the list of the client and the company you were working with, okay? The recruiter is there for a reason. Most of the times the company doesn't want direct contact with the person. That's why they're paying the agency. because they're paying them to do the screening. You know, when the company gets resumes, those people are qualified. Those people meet the skill set. They want to work for the pay rate. They want to work the hours that the company is asking for. They're already, it's just a matter of now I got to find the right fit for our organization. It takes off all those layers from the beginning of I post an ad on Craigslist or Career Builders or with Rochester Works and I've got 100 resumes and nobody to go through them. When they work with an agency, now they've got maybe 3 or 4, maybe 5 resumes, depending on how many they wanted to see, of good qualified candidates, and now what I have to do is set up the interview. And that's all I need to do, and it's so much quicker and easier for a company to do that. So, you know, we're going to tell you the company that we're sending you to, but it's not a good idea to contact that company directly because sometimes they may be posting the same time we are. They might have an ad out there because they're passively looking, but really the agency is doing the hard look for them. Okay? Yes?
Sounds like to avoid all the don'ts, you need to make sure you've got a good log of all your communications.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not just interviews and resume submitting, but that recruiter A has submitted me to company
Mm-hmm.
X, and I got to tell recruiter B and C that happened.
Well, you don't really need to tell recruiter B and C because they shouldn't be sending you somewhere without your knowledge. And really, in industry terms, whatever agency gets your resume over there first is the one that's going to get you if they hire you. That's pretty much how clients will go with it. But really, it doesn't look good for an agency. Say you're working with Remedy, okay? I have a job for you, John, and I call you and I say, I want to send you to ABC Company, and I send your resume over. But say you're working with 2 other staffing firms, and they just blanketly submit you over without even qualifying you for the position. I mean, how do they know you're even interested, right? So what's going to happen is the client's going to tell those 2 other companies, I already have his resume. I received it 2 days ago from another organization. And they may ask those staffing companies questions about you that the staffing company probably can't answer. Or they're going to lie about, you know, what they're saying. The recruiter will lie. But really, you should not be sent over anywhere that they haven't discussed with you first. So the only thing I would keep track of, and normally you have to do this for unemployment anyway, if those of you that are on unemployment, you have to keep track of your job search, because I know when I was on, I used to have to go in and show them where I was looking. You're going to want to keep some type of tracking sheet to show where you've been submitted. So, okay, I'm working with Remedy. They've submitted me here. They've submitted me here. They've submitted me here. Because technically, when you're going unemployment, that's 3 job searches, not 1. You're working with Remedy, but they sent you 3 places. So you're just going to want to keep track of that because 2 months down the line, again, you could be working with another recruiter who then calls you for that same company, and you're going to say, well, just so you know, Remedy sent me over a couple months ago, and, you know, and to be honest, probably it's not going to be so overwhelming that you're not going to be able to keep track of it pretty readily. You know, it's not going to be like you're being sent to 10 companies a week because that's just not how the volume goes. It's going to be like more like 1 or 2 submittals a month, I would think. Okay? Any other questions? So basically, that's my contact information. Like I said, we do a lot of search and placement. Anyone can feel free to send me a resume. Because I don't know all of your names, if you could just let me know where you met me. Like I saw your workshop at MCC. I wanted to submit my resume and just give me a little synopsis of what you're looking for. Where you're willing to travel is important. The pay rate that you're looking for is important. And really what type of position you're looking for, because people can have several different types of work that they've done, but I need to know exactly what you're wanting to do at this point in time. So what else can I answer for anybody? Yes?
Yeah, what's my experience with recruiters is they contact me for a specific position, and then I don't hear anything from the recruiter, and that's how I get in contact with the recruiters. Do I assume that they're also looking for other things and now I'm on the list? Or
I wouldn't assume anything. You know, I would contact your recruiter if you haven't heard back from them. You know, you had a conversation with them. Did you go in and meet with somebody, or?
Yeah, I go in and meet for a specific position.
A specific position? And do you know what happened with that position? At this point, you should follow up, especially if they didn't give you a time frame. I would definitely check in with that recruiter and say, hey, Caleb, right? I have my glasses on, second. I'm Caleb. I came in for such and such a position, and I never heard back what was going on with that. Would you happen to give me some feedback? And let them know that you're inquiring, and at that point, let the recruiter know, I am open for other things. If you get other positions that match my skill set, I would be interested in hearing about those positions. I want you to know that I'm still actively looking for work. So it's important just to let them know that. But, I will be honest, there are a lot of recruiters out there that don't get back to people. I know I hear that a lot. I don't like to hear that because I'm a firm believer of getting back to people when you say you're going to. It's really important. It's my credibility on the line. Like I said, I've done this for a long time in the Rochester market, and I've worked with a lot of organizations, and I never know where you're going to land, right? And if I want to continue to be successful in recruiting, someday you might be in a position where you need to reach out to me. And or I might come knocking on your door saying, hey, I want your business. I want your staffing business. And you're going to look at me and say, yeah, remember me? I'm Caleb. I came in to see you 6 months ago, and I was looking for a position, and you never got back to me. So, you know what? I don't think so. So, you don't want to burn a bridge anywhere, right? And so it's very important. And if I can't help you, I'm going to be honest and tell you that I can't help you. There's no sense in giving you false hope. I mean, one of the reasons I've stayed in staffing so long, and a lot of people don't believe me, the average cycle for people in staffing is probably a year. And like I said, I've been in it about 25. I really, really enjoy helping people find work. I really do. I've loved it since the minute I started doing it, and I fell into it as a fluke. I was unemployed. A staffing agency called me, said, can you come in and answer the phone? And I didn't leave for 11 years. So I just had a knack for it. I had a knack for remembering people. I had a knack for just kind of putting good people with good companies. I just really enjoy it, and I enjoy it to this day. There's nothing better that I like is than finding somebody work and making them successful. I just absolutely love it. Yep. A year? Oh, for staffing? Especially on the entry level end of it. Well, a couple reasons. When you're looking for people on an entry level, there's a burnout factor because, believe it or not, recruiting is very difficult. Recruiting is extremely difficult, especially on the entry level because, the pay rates aren't that great, and it's very hard to find people who are going to work for those wages. And unfortunately, we don't set those wages. The company does, which is, if we could set the wages, it'd be so much easier. But there's a lot, right? And then I make more money, too. There's a lot of multitasking that goes into the position because, again, remember, the staffing person's, the client, the person, the client, the person. They're kind of going back and forth and wearing a lot of different hats. It can be extremely stressful. You have to have a knack for being able to do it. You just have to have a knack for working with all levels of people and being able to have selling skills. And, people think that staffing is, I get a job for somebody to put together widgets. Oh, I have 10 people to put together widgets. Okay, that isn't it at all. And, the hard part about it is, you deal with difficult situations every day, people who walk off jobs, people, believe me, at all levels. I'm not just talking entry-level people, high-level people who walk off jobs. So it's very stressful, and you have to be able to sell, and a lot of people don't realize that there's going to be selling involved. So that's really the burnout factor. You really gotta like working with people because you hear it all in staffing. You hear everything about everybody. They're not, they'll tell you everything. So that's an interesting line of work. If anyone's interested, we have openings.
That wasn't my reason. I contacted a recruiter. Somebody else had recommended they'd had good success
Yes.
with. And when they decided to set up a meeting at Tim Hortons. Is that unusual
No.
versus coming to the office?
No.
Why would they do that instead
Well,
of going to their office?
Because some recruiting firms are very small and don't have actual offices that you could go to. Some recruiting firms, some people are recruiting out of their house. Actually, I know some medical recruiters that do that because they recruit medical people from all over the country. And they're working at a computer at a home base, so they have to go somewhere to meet you. So it isn't, for a smaller recruiting firm.
It was odd, that's why.
Yeah, for a smaller recruiting firm, no. Sometimes it depends where the office is, placed, situated, location-wise. Like, for instance, my office is I don't know how many of you know Livingston County, but my office is in Avon, New York. I go all the way down to Hornell for work, okay? Why not meet the person halfway just to make it convenient? I got somebody in Dansville. You're not working. Why am I going to make you spend all that gas money? I'm going to meet you halfway. Hey, why don't we just meet at like a Dunkin' Donuts or Tim Hortons, and we'll just chat briefly about what you're looking for.
They said, you're here, I'm here.
Yeah,
we're gonna meet.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, that's actually a sign of a good recruiter, I think, that wants to do that because they're looking out for your best interest. And they're not being very demanding on saying, hey, you need to come to me. And also, sometimes it puts people at ease, when you're meeting just out somewhere. So we will do that on occasion. Now, we have an office that's large enough for people to come in and interview and everything. But really, when I'm working on direct hires, I don't necessarily have you come in and meet with me. I do more of my screening over the phone and then submit your resume. And we have you fill out an online application. I may never meet you if you're going on a direct hire. I may just work with you over the phone and through email. And sometimes there's recruiters that aren't local, and that's how you'll work with them. If you're posting your resume out there, there's going to be people who may be calling you that, sometimes for certain positions, companies will go to, their corporate company may be somewhere else that does the hiring, and they may be using agencies outside of the Rochester area to do some of their hiring for some of their positions. I got one of my positions that way in staffing. There was a recruiter that was out in Utah that was recruiting for the company I worked at, and the company was based in Chicago, and they were opening up an office here in Rochester. And my resume was posted on Career Builder, and that person found me from Utah and called and set up all my interviews. And I never met him. So, any other questions? We still have a few minutes. Does anyone have a story to share that they've had success working with a recruiter? Don't tell me that. Yes.
I've got 2 jobs that I've been placed to do account testing. Walked in, not even an interview with the company.
Great.
That's my experience with
Yep. And that's a sign of working with a good recruiter then for you. Because that person's really looking out for your best interest. And it's just, it's getting, are there some people who haven't thought about working with a recruiter at all? I guess I should ask, who is working with recruiters, good or bad? So there's a few. Have I changed anyone's mind today that's not working with a recruiter? Yeah? Okay. What type of work are you looking for?
I want to transition to nonprofit
Uh-huh.
from finance.
Okay. Most nonprofits don't work with agencies or recruiters because they have no money.
Or they got to be a really solid administrative assistant for a good very busy salesperson. Because I worked in sales, and I
Yeah.
know that if you don't have the right person,
Yeah, you need somebody real organized to organize you because salespeople aren't always organized.
it's the truth. Right? They can sell, but they
Right.
don't do the paperwork.
They don't need to worry about the
And then
paperwork.
The clients get upset.
Right.
Right. So, yeah, you changed my mind.
Oh, good. Good. I'm glad.
I was referred to a recruiter by someone that reached out,
Yeah.
one of my ex-colleagues.
Yep.
And he said, you should call this person, and I kind of hesitated a little bit because I thought, well, I don't know, recruiter. But here you go, Lori.
Yeah.
You sold me.
Good. Good. I'm glad. And that's always good to get a referral from somebody else because that starts off when I talked about asking the recruiter different questions, like don't be afraid to ask, how's the process going to go? How many people have you placed at this client? That's another good one. Hey, I was referred by somebody. That's always the best. That's always the best when we're referred because obviously somebody had success with that person and you kind of know what to expect. So that's good.
That's why I asked the question about the Tim Hortons.
Yeah,
because,
right.
Well, one of the gentlemen said he had 3 interviews, 3 totally different types of positions from the same agency and highly recommended it. He said, don't go to this person at the agency, go to this person.
Yeah.
So
We hear that a lot too. You know, I mean, you are. You're going to get your people who you... But it's just like when I was talking before about fitting into the company and the organization. Like, you can have 5 people with the same skill set, but yet you know when it's home for you. Like, you know, hey, I'm really clicking with these people, and this is where I could see myself. It's the same way in working with a recruiter. You know, there's recruiters that have all different styles. You know, what I do is probably different from a lot of other people. So it's just finding that style that works best for you. Some people don't care if they get followed up with. They just send their resume, and hey, if they call me, they call me. Some people like that personal contact. They want to know what's going on. You know, they really want to be in the loop on everything. So, you know, it just depends what your personality is. Hopefully, when you go to that organization, you find somebody that has that same personality as you. When you don't is when it cannot be a good experience. But if you've not had a good experience working with a recruiter, I suggest you try to find another one. Because more and more companies are using recruiters, and it's a really good way to get your foot in the door and get noticed. And if you have a target list of companies, I know Rochester Works talks about that, having a target list. If you have a target list of companies, you know, it'd be important to do some research and find out what agencies in the area are working with those companies, and then try to target it that way. Yes, sir.
So if you're working with a recruiter and you're not getting the opportunity to level of service that is appropriate, and you know that they've only been there for 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
how feasible is it to shift to somebody else within that same company?
Well, sometimes it could be difficult. There's a couple different ways to do it. Number one, you could talk to the manager of the company and say, you know, I'm really not getting what I need, and so I'd like to look at working with somebody else in your organization. I like what your organization's about, but I really feel that I need more. If you've already asked the recruiter that and they haven't given it to you. Secondly, people are going to post for different jobs within the company. So, for instance, I might be recruiting for CNC people, but my colleague might be recruiting for something else. You'll get that name of that person and then just kind of ease your way into, you know, hey, I was working with so-and-so, but I want to make sure you have my resume too. You don't want to say, well, I was working with your colleague and they really stink, because that's not going to make for a good introduction. But just say, hey, I just want to make sure that other people within the organization have my resume, because I don't know if you work on, you know, with various companies. Sometimes it's set up that in an organization, I'm going to work with XYZ company, my colleague's going to work with ABC company, regardless of what positions come in. So I could be hiring for all positions at XYZ company. Now, some organizations do it where I'm the person, I do all the skilled trades. I do all the CNC, machinists, tool and die makers, and my colleague does all the clerical work. So it depends how the organization is structured, and that's something else you could ask as well. You know, how is the agency structured? Do you recruit? And that's part of those questions that you're going to want to ask up front. You know, do you do just CNC work, or are you going to have clerical positions like what I'm looking for, or finance or accounting, or whatever the case may be? You want to know that that company is hiring not just this one time, but you want to know that that company is hiring for the types of positions that you're looking for. Because if the recruiter says to you, you know, we normally don't get anything like this in, really, you know, you're going to want to move on, because that will be your only shot at something like that.
So if they're not, if they typically not hire in your area of expertise.
You're probably going to want to work with other people. Yeah. It could just be that that organization doesn't get enough of those types of jobs in. You know, if I'm randomly getting, you know, one job every 6 months or a year, you know, really what am I going to be doing for you? Not a lot.
Okay, but if one of the larger local companies typically will work with one, maybe 2 different recruiting agencies.
No, a lot of companies work with one. To be quite honest with you, a lot of companies work with one. Not,
So I've seen some that have 2.
yeah, some do, but not all do. So,
And if the work that they're staffing for
uh-huh.
covers the gambit of hourly to executive,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the work that staffing company is going to get is going to be in the
Oh, absolutely, but how much is that going to be? So you're going to want to work with more than one agency, not just for that company, but what I'm saying is to keep your resume out there with other companies, you're going to want to have multiple recruiters because say, for instance, let's just use, I work with Xerox, okay? No, let's not use that. Okay, one of my companies, and this is actual experience, I work with Southco Manufacturing. They're located in Honeywell Falls, okay? We are exclusive for all their entry-level positions. I have a person that's on site because I have near 100 people there, all right? Now, their higher-level positions, I don't have a contract for that. They call out to me and 2 other agencies, and it's a first-come, first-serve who has the best candidate. So although you could be working with an agency that, yes, we're the only ones, because I can say we're the only ones who work with Southco, but how? On entry-level positions, not on high-level. Because a lot of times organizations will need to have more than one resource for higher-level positions because it's hard to find good people. So normally for their higher-level work, they're going to work with more than one agency. Yes?
So thanks for all the contact information. I'm sure many or most of us will be reaching out to you very quickly. At the same time, you're encouraging us to be in partnership with more than one recruiter.
Yes.
So who's your competition?
Who's my competition? Everyone else that does staffing in Rochester.
And what's your recommendation for how to find you? If I didn't know, how would I find you?
Good question. No. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to do research, and you're really going to want to Google different companies. You actually can look for employment agencies. Actually, Rochester Works has a list of all the employment agencies that are out there. I think they actually have it on their website. It may need to be updated, but I know they have it because they change all the time. But again, when you're networking, talk to other people that you network with. Say, hey, I'm thinking about working with an agency. I'm thinking about working with a recruiter. Have you had any good success? Who have you worked with? What agencies have you heard out there? Also, look at ads. Look at Career Builder. Look at Indeed. Look at Craigslist especially. Most of the agencies use Craigslist because it's free. Okay? And we all have accounts to post. You'll see what agencies are posting. You may not know the company, but you'll see how often an agency is posting for that particular type of work. Because whether they have, and that's another thing, whether they have people or not, they're still going to look for people. Just because you're there, you see a job that you're qualified for, and you call me and say, wait a minute, why are you advertising? You know I got this. Well, I need more people. I always have to have a pipeline of people. Because what if, in fact, they do hire you? Then the next time I get that order, I don't have anybody. So I'm always going to advertise. Yes?
How do you find out what companies are using different recruiters?
Most companies will, but again, it's calling the organization and kind of asking, or trying to somehow get in touch with someone at that organization, at that client or that company, and finding out if they do use a staffing agency. But most of the time, you'll kind of see, a lot of times when recruiters are advertising, they'll advertise what company. Sometimes, they can use the name of the company. But if you see something that you're interested in, say, hey, I'm looking to get into a particular company, do you work with them? Because there's nothing to tell you that we do or we don't. Are you thinking of a particular? I can tell you who they're working with.
Well, just in general, like I heard that Constellation Brands typically uses an agency, but I know that they have listings on their website too.
Right. Yes, and I actually know a recruiter there, Erin Dembski, if you want to write her name down. She actually is a recruiter for Constellation Brands, and they also use Adecco out of Canandaigua. Yep. But Erin used to be a colleague of mine. Many people that are recruiters at companies used to work in staffing at some point in time. They got recruited away by the client. So Erin used to work with me at another agency. That's how I know her. But she does a lot of recruitment on LinkedIn. Yes, John?
One approach that I use that may be helpful to others is, I did go to Rochester Works and saw a listing of area recruiters because I didn't know who was out there. And then I went to LinkedIn and did a search since, for example, Remedy may have a branch office, does have a branch office. They may have several recruiters in that office. You don't know if a particular recruiter is hiring for a company, as Lori mentioned, or for a specific profession, IT, CNC, whatever. You don't know that. And they usually don't, recruiters don't list that on their LinkedIn account, more often than not. So what I chose to do, right or wrong, was to reach out to the branch managers. Let them filter it down. They will. Let them filter it to the correct recruiter.
And that was a good approach, John, actually. I got John's resume, and we actually have been working together. And he did. He sent to the branch managers. I happened to get back to John first. He actually sent to a couple of our offices, so I got back to him first, so guess who gets to work with John? Me. I do, actually, even though I'm a branch manager, in our organization, the branch managers do a lot of recruitment. So we actually do more of the higher level recruitment because our staffing recruiters are doing more of the entry level. So because it takes more time, we're doing more of the higher level recruitment. But that is a good way to get to know somebody within the organization. LinkedIn is a beautiful tool. You could do a lot of research on LinkedIn. But again, it's, networking, talking to people. Hey, have you worked with an agency? Who have you worked with? Who would you recommend? And, again, a lot of the companies that use agencies, you'll see different advertisements. A lot of times, sometimes we can use the name if we're in an exclusive relationship with the client. Sometimes we can't. But here's a prime example. I am in an exclusive relationship with a company that's in Batavia, but they don't like us to use their name in advertising, okay? But when I say yogurt plant, it's one of two places, right? So you know that I'm working with a yogurt plant in Batavia. There's two of them. Now you just got to find out which one do I work with. Anything else? Did you find it helpful, the information, yes or no? Yep.
Now, this is 6 months ago.
Okay.
All right? I would see a job posting, and it was through XYZ agency. And they mentioned the company, or they said yogurt for your not rocket science.
Right.
I would go to that company to aid in my research, see if I'm interested in it. But if they had that job posting 6 months ago, I would have gone back with the agency.
Right.
Gone directly to them. What's your feelings on that one way or the other? I mean, you know what I'm asking.
Yeah. And
What's the advantages of the agency? Simple advantages.
Okay. Because all right, most times when you're filling out an application, you're filling it out online, okay? Here's one of the things we used to teach at Rochester Works to some of our clients. Go there, even though you're filling it online, go there with your resume so somebody could see you at the organization. If I get a million, like for instance, when you apply with Remedy, all we have is just an online application, and it's very limited what we can see, okay? Whereas if you're working with an agency and that agency is recruiting for that position too, they're selling you to that company. They're getting you in front of somebody. You may never get in front of somebody. You're one application of 100, of 1,000 that come through there for that position. And you could very easily get lost in the shuffle. Something has to make you stand out, and that recruiter can do that for you. Because again, remember, number one, they're going to have the relationship with you. They're selling you because their goal is to place you because they want to make money, okay? So they're going to sell you to that organization, all right? And it's just, they're getting you in front of somebody. That hiring manager has said, I need somebody to do this skill. I'm only sending them people who can do that, people who are qualified, want the job, and want to interview, versus 100 people that I don't even have time to go through that stuff. And you could be lost in that shuffle and never get looked at by anybody. So it depends. It really does. It's not rocket science. Like I've always said, staffing is so gray. There's some people who want black and white. That's another reason we have turnover in staffing, because I could tell you today, don't do this, and tomorrow I could tell you to do it, because it depends on the client, it depends on the job seeker, it depends on the job, it depends on the situation. Staffing is probably the grayest industry you'll ever work in. There's really no black and white. Every person, every job, there's something just a little bit different that happens. I saw somebody's hand over here. Was there? Nope. Okay. So, I mean, that's the thing. It's just everything is a little bit, it depends who we're dealing with. Like I said before, sometimes, I might not be following up with you for 3 weeks, or sometimes the client will say, get them in here tomorrow to interview. I mean, we never know how that's going to go either. So it very much depends on the company we're working with. So, well, I thank you all for your time. I hope I helped you. I hope I changed some people's minds. I hope I gave you some information on working with a recruiter more effectively. There's a lot of good recruiters out here in Rochester. We're all looking to make money, so hopefully you'll get with one who's real aggressive. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.